Useful. On behalf of our Foreign Affairs Standing Committee, I'd like to welcome the President Hashim Thashi to the House of Commons Standing Committee and on Foreign Affairs and International Development. The committee is honored that you've agreed to appear before us, and we look forward to hearing from you. On behalf of the committee, I would like to welcome you back to Canada and wish you a pleasant and productive stay here. President Thaci had his distinguished career as a Kosovo leader, having previously served as Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister, as Prime Minister, President. He oversaw Kosovo's declaration of independence in 2008 and served as the new country's head of government until 2014. Colleagues, he was elected to the presidency in Kosovo's National Assembly in 2016. Canada and Kosovo have very good relations. Since Canada recognized Kosovo's independence in 2008, we maintain full diplomatic relations with Kosovo and have provided significant amounts of aid to Kosovo over the years in support of its development and growth. And I hope the President's trip here will be further the engagement between our two countries, and I welcome the President. For the President's information, this is fairly new for our Foreign Affairs Committee. We have had the opportunity to hear from foreign leaders of other countries, not something Canadians have seen in the past. And so this is a televised occasion for us to hear directly from the President of Kosovo, and we think that's extremely exciting for Canadians to hear first and foremost themselves what's been going on in your country and the relationship and the work that we're doing. So I want to welcome you, Mr. President, and turn the floor over to you. As normal, we will want to hear from you as long as you'll give us, and then my colleagues, I'm sure, will have some very good questions to ask you as relates to our relationship and your country called Kosovo. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, extraordinary opportunity to be here among you today, members of the Foreign Affairs Committee. It's an honor to meet today all of you and to discuss actually about Kosovo, but also about the whole Southeast Europe, for our achievements, but also challenges we face in building peace and reconciliation. But also to discuss our bilateral cooperation between Kosovo and Canada. As always, let me express deepest gratitude in the name of the institutions of the State of Kosovo, in the name of the people of Kosovo, for the government and for the people of Canada, for the support, continuous support that you have given to Kosovo from the times of war, when the Milosevic genocide was prevented, through independence, and to today when we have consolidated the State of Kosovo. The story of Kosovo is a successful story, a story of success, of achievements, of common achievements, our common achievements.
Gjithashtu më vjen mirë që vizitën që po realizoj po ndodh në kohën kur Kanada është.
I'm pleased that I'm here when Canada is celebrating 150 years of Confederation. Canada is a strategic partner with whom we have in common aspirations, values, and principles. As Kosovo, we will always remain grateful to Canada. Especially, I would emphasize receiving 7,000 refugees from Kosovo in 1999. I met some of those former refugees while in Halifax, visiting the military base where most of them were received when they arrived in Canada. It was a very touching moment to recall the days of war, but also a moment of joy and pride to see that how well they have integrated in the Canadian society and how they contribute to Canadian society and state now. Now they are a bridge between our two nations. I met young men and women who arrived here as kids, and now they are part of the society. They are athletes, politicians, artists, people who love this country as much as they love Kosovo. Support of Canada was also important after the war in rebuilding the country and building peace. We are grateful that Canada was among the first countries to recognize Kosovo and continues to support Kosovo in consolidating its statehood. I am personally a witness to this. Our bilateral cooperation is growing, especially in economy and more particularly in the mining sector, though of course we look to expand in other fields as well. Last month, I had the honor to decorate with a medal for contribution to peace and democracy, former Foreign Minister Oxworth, and I'm pleased to see here in this commission the MP Vanderbilt, who was decorated by the Government of Canada for her contribution to peace. I very much look forward to a government that will be signed between our two countries on protection of investments. Also, yesterday, I laid a wreath in the monument of reconciliation and peace building to express our gratitude for the role of Canada for peace in the world. It memorized the involvement and the role of Canada in Croatia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Macedonia, in Kosovo, and all around the world. That's the greatness of Canada. Dear deputies, dear MPs, let me say a few words about the past of Kosovo, about the present, but in particular for aspirations for the future for Kosovo and for the whole of Southeastern Europe. In December, Kosovo celebrates 10th anniversary of its independence. It is recognized by 114 countries. The Declaration of Independence came after a lengthy international process that sought a solution for Kosovo's political status. This international process started in the 90s with resolutions of United Nations that condemned violence and repression of Milošević's regime. It continued with the international conference in Rambouillet in France in spring '99, where the international community again sought a solution for Kosovo. Milošević's regime not only did not cooperate with the international community, but continued its violent and repressive campaign that escalated into a genocide. This forced NATO to intervene to stop another genocide that was taking place in Europe. This brought a United Nations administration in Kosovo. In 2005, United Nations appointed President Ahtisaari of Finland, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, to work on finding a solution for Kosovo status. In a process led by the United Nations, where all took active part, but in particular the United States of America, the European Union, and Russia, President Ahtisaari recommended that the best solution for Kosovo is independence. Oversight independence. We have, in 5 years, we implemented fully all the provisions of the conditional independence that were aligned in Ahtisaari's package. And recommendations of Ahtisaari, in February 2008, Kosovo declared independence. Today, I can say that there has never been a more multilateral and more coordinated internationally Declaration of Independence than in the case of Kosovo. The final stamp on Kosovo's independence was given by the International Court of Justice in July 2010, when it stated clearly that the Declaration of Independence by Kosovo is in line with international law. After Serbia had asked the International Court of Justice if Kosovo did violate the international law by declaring independence. Dear MPs, where is Kosovo today? It has signed the Stabilization Association Agreement with the European Union, which is the first step towards membership in the European Union. Kosovo was accepted in the Million Challenge Corporation program of the United States Congress and is now implementing those projects. Both these achievements were achieved only after recognized reforms in economy, in rule of law, and in building democratic institutions. Kosovo is a member of many international organizations like World Bank, International Monetary Fund, or Venice Commission, and other international organizations, political, sportive, or cultural. In line with Ahtisaari package, we have built all-inclusive governing institutions where all communities of Kosovo are represented. Kosovo's parliament has 120 seats, and out of those, 20 are reserved for non-majority communities, 10 for the Serb community, and 10 others for other communities to ensure their political representation. We've installed affirmative policies in education, in employment, in using languages, in public media to ensure education, employment, and information for all in their own language. We've installed communication, a dialogue, as the only tool to find solution for all our outstanding issues. We promote dialogue between faiths that is best seen in the Interfaith Conference that we organize every year, that brings together religious leaders, politicians, academics, and from all over the world who discuss the dialogue between faiths. We are proud of tolerance and coexistence between all communities in Kosovo. I have initiated the establishing of the Commission for Truth and Reconciliation as another tool to promote the dialogue between ethnic communities in Kosovo, to close the chapter of war and to open the chapter of peace, of dialogue, of cooperation, of coexistence in a multi-ethnic society, a democratic society, all-inclusive society. We have consolidated statehood of Kosovo internally by laying the sovereignty of Kosovo in all the territories of Kosovo, including the northern part of Kosovo. Thanks to the dialogue and affirmative measures that we've taken today, this part is also part of Kosovo institutions, state institutions. We've had elections according to Kosovo laws. They've elected their leaders that work according to Kosovo laws within the institutions of Kosovo. The last achievement was the swearing of judges and prosecutors from the Serb community in northern part of Kosovo, who from now they implement Kosovo law in northern part of Kosovo. This is a result of the dialogue that Kosovo conducts with the state of Serbia, with facilitation, with leadership of the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings me to another important for Kosovo, promotion of dialogue for finding solution for the whole region. For 5 years now, Kosovo and Serbia have engaged in a dialogue process with facilitation of the European Union that has brought a lot of agreements that have improved the lives of our citizens and the relationship between our two countries. For the first time, after 100 years of conflict and hostilities, in April 2013, we've signed the first international agreement for normalization of relations between Kosovo and Serbia. This has contributed not only to strengthening peace between Kosovo and Serbia, but also strengthening peace in the whole region. Today, as President of Kosovo, together with President of Serbia, Vučić, and with High Representative of the European Union, Madam Mogherini, we seek a new dynamics, a new quality for the dialogue process. We are working towards a new agreement for full normalization of relations, for good neighborly relations, and for reconciliation between our two states. We promote dialogue and cooperation in our relationship with other countries of the region. We have excellent relationship with Macedonia, with Albania, with Montenegro. We respect territorial integrity of Macedonia, and we always call for full implementation of Ohrid Agreement as the best way to accommodate all communities living in Macedonia. We also have a very good relationship with Albania, and we don't work to change the borders, but to open them according to European Union model. With Montenegro, we have excellent relationship, and we were very happy when Montenegro joined NATO, because that's another step towards strengthening peace and stability in the whole region of the Western Balkans. It's true that as Kosovo, we have not ratified border demarcation agreement with Montenegro. But just for your information, this is due to internal political competition in Kosovo and has nothing to do with our relationship with Montenegro. It's a clear, just agreement. We are an active member in all regional forums where we promote cooperation in the region. Dear MPs, let me also say a few words about the future, our challenges and aspirations. Continuation of reforms in all sectors of life is our main aspiration, and this agreement of Stabilization Association Agreement with the European Union is the best guideline for this. Governments of Kosovo are committed to achieving those reforms, and they include Association and Stabilization Agreement in the government programs. In Kosovo, international community led justice first 8 years as the United Nations, and then 9 years as a mission of the European Union for Rule of Law, so-called EULEX. This brought us the best legal framework, but also brought us capacities, national capacities to deal with implementing those laws. Reports from the United States and the European Union follow all achievements in all sectors of life, in particular in rule of law. The main challenge for Kosovo is consolidation of Kosovo statehood internationally. I will not say anything new if I say that there are those who still oppose the project of building an independent, democratic, multi-ethnic Kosovo. I am particularly here to talk about Russia, who is fighting the West by preventing projects for peace and stability in the region of Europe, Southeast Europe. Russia, as you all know, attempted to a coup d'etat in Montenegro to prevent its membership in NATO. It tried to prevent democratic elections in Macedonia to, again, be an obstacle to reforms towards NATO and EU. It prevents Kosovo's membership in international organizations like UNESCO or other organizations, but also preventing Kosovo membership in the United Nations. I was very pleased to hear in Halifax that Secretary General of NATO warned about the Russian threat for the West and for NATO. But the main reason why Russia is able to exert any influence in the Balkans is delay, or is the European Union and NATO are late to include the region in their integration processes. This delay by NATO and EU is open way for other ideologies to penetrate the region, be it Russia or other ideologies. In the Balkans, we've seen also fundamentalists and radicalists trying to penetrate our region. We've had individuals who have joined ISIS, there's no denying, but we are also a country target of terrorist attacks. We have been successful in preventing terrorist attacks in the territory of Kosovo, but also in the region. We are an active member of the Global Coalition Against ISIS and leader in the region in fighting terrorism, radicalism, and extremism. But our efforts are made more difficult because we lack membership in Interpol and in other international security mechanisms. This is why it's important that you support us in our membership in these mechanisms. To strengthen Kosovo's security infrastructure, we have initiated transformation of the Kosovo Security Force in Kosovo Armed Forces. This will be done in consultation and with agreement of communities in Kosovo and in full coordination with NATO and our international partners. We've asked from Canada to deepen its cooperation with the KSF, Kosovo Security Force, and in particular to have on projects to include all communities and to ensure proper gender representation. KSF today has more than 10% of its troops coming from non-majority communities, and almost 10% of these troops are women. Dear deputies, Kosovo has gone far, has moved far since the days of the war. It's not a country destroyed by war, but it's a country that aspires membership in NATO and in the EU, and who is successfully implementing reforms in economy, in justice, and in building its democratic institutions. I am aware that we have to face many more challenges, but I'm very proud that in all opinion polls, Kosovo citizens always come out as more pro-NATO, most pro-NATO and pro-European citizens. We are determined that our future is in NATO and in EU, in peace, in dialogue, and cooperation with all. We are on the right path, that from a consumer of security to become an example of promotion of peace, of dialogue, and cooperation. Thank you. I would be very happy to continue discussing and answer all your questions.
Chair President Tachi, we're going to go right to questions, as we always do. So I want to start with Mr. O'Toole, please. Aaron.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your presentation. You touched upon several issues that I wanted to explore with you, and I'm glad you did. But first, I want to say that I was pleased to join my colleagues yesterday at the Peacekeeping Monument. As a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces, I certainly have friends that served as part of the Kosovo mission, and it was nice to see our last officer from Pristina come and join the ceremony, and I'd like to thank my colleague Anita for organizing it. And as someone that served in Halifax in the Air Force with our Navy, I was very happy to see you inspect our honor guard in Halifax in conjunction with the Security Forum. And I know that city would have treated you very, very well. You touched on international membership, and with Kosovo being recognized by Canada, United States, and other countries for a decade now, where do you feel your campaign for status in the United Nations sits? And did you raise UN membership in your meetings with Prime Minister Trudeau?
Two, three questions. And okay,
Please, Mr. President, we'll go member at a time, because Mr. O'Toole gets a number of minutes to ask questions.
Okay.
So sometimes he's quicker than we expect.
Okay.
So the floor is yours.
You all know that Declaration of Independence was done in a coordinated manner with European Union, with the United States, and with direct involvement until the very last moments of Russia as well. We were told, and as leaders of the Kosovo, we had taken upon us to implement fully the Ahtisaari package, again, which was drafted together by United States, EU, and the Russians, Ahtisaari being the emissary of the Secretary of the United States of United Nations. So it was a UN-led process, so that in a coordinated manner we moved towards finding a solution for Kosovo's political status. I personally was part of this process that lasted for 3 years in Vienna, Austria. And I have to say that we've made a lot of compromises in order to to maintain international consensus regarding Kosovo's independence or Kosovo's political status. But at the end, like all our partners and the leaders of this process, we were also disappointed with the insistence of Russia to use its right for veto in the Security Council of the United Nations to accept the package of President Ahtisaari. This continued in summer, autumn 2007, and in winter 2008. President Ahtisaari was personally involved in this. So where do we stand with Kosovo's membership in the United Nations? To be honest, very open, Russians were taking part in Rambouillet, in negotiations for independence in Vienna. They also participate in the peacekeeping forces after the war in Kosovo. They have a liaison office in Pristina, in Kosovo. But Russian attitude, Russian stance, unfortunately remains, regrettably remains unchanged, so, meaning they are opposed to Kosovo, and they openly oppose Kosovo in the Security Council of the United Nations. This stance, this attitude is not accidental, and it is not only directed against Kosovo, but we have to look at this more broadly from geostrategic perspective. I believe, and judging from my meetings I've had, this is Russia's fight against the West, Western principles, Western values and interest. I want to believe that that Russia will recognize Kosovo independence one day, and I believe and I hope that we will have very soon an agreement on normalization and reconciliation between Kosovo and Serbia. And through this dialogue, we will remove any arguments from the hands of those who are opposed to Kosovo independence and give more arguments to those who support Kosovo's independence. Regarding Kosovo's membership in the United Nations, this again will be a process coordinated with our partners. It will not be a one-sided process. Personally, I don't like Palestinian model for Kosovo. I don't prefer that for Kosovo. After all, these are two very different cases. But I believe that after we've finalized the dialogue process between Kosovo and Serbia, I don't believe that Russians will be more Serbs than the Serbs themselves. If we agree with Serbia for reconciliation, cooperation, good neighborly relations, then what's the argument for Russia not to recognize Kosovo unless they really want to just fight our partners through Kosovo? Nevertheless, Kosovo is not an enemy of Russia, though it is very clear on its aspiration that its future lies in NATO and in the European Union. And we will not give up on these values, these aspirations, under no circumstances.
Madame van den Beld, please. Anu.
Mayor Dita, thank you very much, Mr. President, for being here in Canada and before our committee. It is a particular honor for me to welcome you here because, as you know, in the crucial period of 2007 and 2008, I was seconded by the Government of Canada to be part of the OSCE mission in Kosovo as an advisor to the Assembly of Kosovo and to the very nascent democratic institutions that were being established there. And I am very impressed with how far Kosovo has come in those institutions, ensuring that they are pluralistic, that they are gender balanced, that they are multi-ethnic and independent. And we've seen that progress, and you outlined some of that today. I was also extremely happy yesterday to see you come and lay a bouquet at the Peacekeeping Monument. As we know, Canadian peacekeepers have been around the world, and in seeing the progress that Kosovo is making, we see the value and the reason why Canadian peacekeepers go to other countries and promote that kind of peace. So thank you for being there yesterday. 10 years ago, almost this month, I led a study visit to Canada from Kosovo to come and look at our parliament, at our public service tribunal, to look at how the pluralistic institutions and independent from interference, political interference, operated here in Canada. And I know that many of the lessons from that were implemented in Kosovo. I would be very interested to hear from you how Kosovo has developed in its institutions, both in the parliament, but also in oversight institutions, in the public service. I know that Kosovo has a very professional and independent public service with very many talented young people in it. If you could tell us a little bit about how those institutions are progressing.
Kosovo was lucky, was fortunate that since the first day, since the end of the war in June 1999, there was civilian and military international presence there. And from that moment, we started building independent institutions with advice, suggestions, and learning from international community. I would like to also emphasize that we were a country that was occupied and suffered genocide by Milosevic, but we also had some experience of working with institutions. The society was emancipated. Together with the international community, we drafted constitutions and the legal framework in line with highest international standards, building independent institution, separation of power between pillars, and democratic functioning of all the pillars of society. Yesterday, we just finished the second round of municipal elections in Kosovo, which were fair, democratic, transparent, all-inclusive. All participants accept the results of elections immediately, and elections are highly praised, and the Central Election Commission is always highly praised for their role. Also, Kosovo institutions are always praised for maintaining their independence, be it constitutional court, courts, the media, and other institutions, relevant institutions. This is why I would emphasize that we've built a tradition in Kosovo of respecting separation of powers and respecting decisions of independent institutions. Of course, there's always room to do more, but again, I say it proudly that we are a good example for the whole region. And what I would also like to emphasize that these institutions now are led by Kosovars, by nationals, including the Ombudsperson's office and other important institutions, meaning we've built our own capacities to turn these institutions into national credible institutions for citizens of Kosovo who provide services of international standards.
Was, of course, one of the first countries to recognize the independence of Kosovo. I will never forget that day, February 17th, almost 10 years ago now. I saw the old men in the streets with wrinkled faces and tears running down their face, holding the children's hands and knowing their children would live in peace and in a democratic, pluralistic society. So that's something that will stay with me. And I think for many Canadians, we remember the arrival of the refugees and the contributions now that the refugees countries are making to Canada. I know that Lloyd Axworthy, our former foreign minister, was recently in Kosovo, and he talked about this as a model in terms of peacekeeping in regions of the world that are currently undergoing some of the horrors that Kosovo went through, and how Canada could potentially, and Kosovo itself, help the world today by looking at what happened in Kosovo and how the international community came together to lead to an independent country, and how this might be used as a model in the future in other countries.
As I said, the story of Kosovo is a story of success, but this is a common joint achievement of Kosovo as an international community. We are consolidated internally, but also in the international stage. But I also said that we don't only have partners and supporters, we also have opponents of our independence. And any obstacles in further international consolidation, I believe that we will overcome working together with international partners, including Canada. Canada has given support for our democratic transition, for freedom. And just as you don't forget the day when we declared independence, for me is also unforgettable the support that we've received from international countries in this aspiration, including Canada. Canada is recognized in Kosovo. Its role is recognized by all sides in Kosovo. But what I believe we can do more is to deepen our bilateral cooperation, be it in economy, diplomacy, defense and security, in education, through our common values, common principles that we share. I'm very proud that a lot of Kosovars are in Canada, and they serve as a bridge that links our two nations together. They and their families, they bring Canadian experience in Kosovo society, in Kosovo institutions. So please do see Kosovo and feel Kosovo as your strategic partner global, and this will always be like this. Today, Kosovo is more pro-NATO than even some NATO member states. And even though there's a lot of criticism towards EU because of their delay reaching to the Balkans, nevertheless, more than 90% of Kosovars are in favor of EU membership. Not to mention their pro-American attitude. They are the most pro-American citizens. The aspiration is the Western values, Western principles. Any delays in integration or the challenges or the issues that we are discussing with all our partners. A month ago, I discussed this with Vice President Pence in the White House. We discussed this with our counterparts in the European Union. Let me say very openly, as a friend among friends, what is my main concern? My main concern, and I'm not concerned about Kosovo, but about the whole Western Balkan, East and Southeastern Europe. NATO and EU should not be late with enlargement and with integration of the Western Balkans. We were all happy about the Montenegro's membership in NATO because it was a strong message for the whole Western Balkans. Any delays by NATO, by the EU, this vacuum that they leave is being used really by Russia, but other anti-Western ideologies. Russia is very influential today, in particular in Serbia, influential in their economy, in their media, military, intelligence service, political competition in all segments of life. And they are influential in other parts where there are sub-communities, particularly in Republika Srpska in Bosnia. They try to influence Montenegro and to prevent further reforms, even though they are losing their rhythm. But they have not given up from attempts to destabilize Montenegro. They will not be able to penetrate and exercise such influence in Kosovo, of course. But there's always Sputnik there, or Russia today, that is immediately translated in the medias around the world, including Kosovo media, which only builds including fake news about, but also the West. Delays by NATO and EU is also used by extremist elements and radicalist, be it radical Islam or fundamentalism or others. Kosovo was determined to fight these elements, to fight terrorism. And I'm very proud, I feel very good that we have received the highest praise all the way to the level of President Obama and Vice President in the past, and now by President Trump and Vice President Pence. And we will continue fighting without any compromises, extremism and terrorism. We have the necessary experience, we have built the necessary legislation, and our institutions of rule of law are functioning in fighting these phenomena. We've identified all the individuals who are in Syria and Iraq who want to join ISIS. Of course, we have to be rational and remain determined to continue this fight, especially in case they return to Kosovo, and find ways how to deal with them, but also with their families. And this is an issue that we discuss both in Pristina, but we also discuss this with our partners, allies of the Global Coalition Against Terrorism. Kosovo, a country that needed peace today, has capacities to export peace, to help peace around the world. This is why we need to be a member of international organizations as soon as possible.
Ms. Mandelbaum, we'll go to Madame Lavadière, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for being here today and for your presentation today. Do you speak a little bit of French? A little. Great. You said that there were efforts made to be tolerant and to coexist in peace with the various ethnic communities. If I've understood correctly, I think there was a recent agreement that would give more autonomy to the regions that are majority Serbian in Kosovo. And I'm wondering if you could talk a bit more about this topic. Thank you.
Let's just understand each other clearly. In 2013, we reached an agreement for normalization of relations between Kosovo and Serbia. This was the first agreement. And the first point of this agreement was asked for establishing of the Association of Municipalities with Serb majority community. This issue went to Kosovo's Constitutional Court, got approval from the Constitutional Court, and now the Kosovo's institutions have the obligation and will establish the Association of Kosovo Serb Majority Municipalities that will work in accordance with Constitution and laws of the Republic of Kosovo. This is another step towards accommodating Kosovo Serb community. But this is not a step towards giving them autonomy that would have legislative or executive powers. This is similar to the association that we have of other municipalities in Kosovo. Every municipality will be allowed to join as they wish this association, and is fully in line with the European standards of self-governance. This obligation that Kosovo has taken upon itself and will meet this obligation, and will establish this association of Serb majority communities. This is always in the spirit of accommodating all communities in Kosovo.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much once again. This committee, a few months ago, or last year, did a study on the question of women and peace and security. And we noted how the involvement of women, particularly when we're rebuilding a country is very important. Obviously, it's not always easy, or it doesn't happen automatically. For example, in Kosovo, the unemployment rate of women is particularly high. And I'm wondering if you have taken specific measures to integrate women into the social dialogue and to help them, get them involved in rebuilding the country. And there's a word in English that works much better, is the l'habilité des femmes, l'habilitation des femmes, or women empowerment.
Роль ГРУ.
Role of women in Kosovo is not only about taking part in decision making. It's also a role to lead in Republic of Kosovo. There's always room to do more, but for example, 30% of members of the Kosovo Parliament consist of women MPs. This is required quota by law. On the other hand, I'm very proud to say that in a time of democratic transition was the first in the Western Balkans to have a woman as the president, head of state. That was President Yahyaga, who served before me. Also, today, Central Election Commission is led by a woman. Basic Court in Pristina by a woman. Constitutional Court is led by a woman. Our ambassador to United Nations, to the United States, they are women. There are ministers, though I wish there were more women ministers. But it's the battle between political parties about seats, and sometimes egos grow bigger than principles. We also had elections now, and in many of them, women were running for mayors. So I can say that there is a noted representation of Kosovo. As I said, only in the security, Kosovo security force, there are more than almost 10% women. Kosovo police force is 20% women, and this is in all other institutions. Of course, we will do more, but we have to appreciate the achievement, the way that we treat, and we try to create opportunities not only to participate, but also to lead institutions in society. Civil society, media are also where women have an increasing leadership role. There has been a lot of progress, valued progress. What I would also like to reiterate is that Kosovo is nominally a majority Muslim country, but this is a traditional European Islam. This is not an Islamic country. This is a country with a European Islam. Of course, this is part of, because of history, we were victim of history developments, but Kosovo has never lost and is returning to its roots, which is European identity. The first condition for this was freedom. Only in the last 20 years we can speak for ourselves and decide, make our own decisions for ourselves, and only now we are building capacities.
I will leave some time for my colleagues, but I just wanted to stress that with 30% of women who are MPs in your country, you're doing better than Canada. Thank you.
Merci.
How did I know she was going to say that? Mr. Wisniewski, please. Boris, you're on. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, President. It's an honor to have you appear before the committee today, and it's a special honor for many of my residents of Etobicoke because I know they're watching this televised proceeding. We have many Kosovar Etobians, and they're proud Canadians, but they're also very proud of their ancestral roots. And very proud of how far Kosovo has come since independence, but also worried. Worried, notwithstanding all of the progress, that war, conflict could once again be visited upon the people of Kosovo. I noted that the Kosovo Center for Security Studies publishes occasional research papers on serious security threats. And just last month in October, they published such a paper titled Russian Interference in Kosovo, How and Why. And in the executive summary, in the first line, it says, Kosovo is exposed to genuine and formidable Russian meddling campaign against its Western state-building model and its democratic values, in particular since 2008. Numerous subversive and non-military instruments continue to be used against a multi-ethnic Kosovo in order to create a pretext for a failed state and heighten local separatism within Kosovo, the Kosovo Serb community in northern municipalities. And I'd like to zero in on this subversive and non-military instruments that Russia appears to be using in Kosovo. You've referenced the threat to neighboring states, Montenegro. It's mind-boggling that in the 21st century, in a European country, a prime minister would be the potential victim of a assassination attempt by Russian special services, which has now been well documented for his pro-NATO stance. However, in the Balkans, and especially in Kosovo, it appears that Russia is using particular tools in their special ops kits, tools that we don't necessarily, are not necessarily familiar with in the West, that would be counterintuitive. In the report, it mentions the construction of the Russian-Serbian Humanitarian Center in the city of Niš, which is less than 100 kilometers from Pristina. Notwithstanding the name, a Russian-Serbian Humanitarian Center, it actually appears to be an outpost for Russian military and Russian intelligence. So you have that particular tool in the toolkit. But something that we don't quite understand that well, because we have long established traditions of separation of church and state, it appears that the Russian Orthodox Church often is used as an arm of the special operations, some of the geopolitical games that are being played. And we see that in particular in the Balkans, and using the Serbian Orthodox Church as a tool in these games. I note that Russia used UNESCO to provide funding to Serbian monasteries and Kosovo, significant funding, as well as they provide monks to go there. The suspicions are these aren't really monks, nor are they serving spiritual needs. At the same time, they've blocked Kosovo's attempts to join UNESCO. So perhaps you could expand on some of this, because it's something in the West that we don't encounter, and it just runs so counter our political culture.
Faleminderit shumë për pyetjen.
Thank you very much for this question. I mentioned Russia's attempts to destabilize the region earlier. And this is done in so many levels. And in all the countries. First, they try to slow down or to make the reforms in the Western Balkans fail. you mentioned the worst, actually, example in Montenegro. They trying to prevent Montenegro's membership in NATO. It was not a battle between political parties in Montenegro. It was a strategic battle. Russia trying to prevent Montenegro to join the NATO. And this is why we were so happy to see that Montenegro was received in NATO, became member of NATO. You mentioned this center in Niš. We all know that it is center for spying, for monitoring, and it has nothing to do with humanitarian issues. It's not only to observe, to oversight Kosovo. It's also about Albania, Montenegro, Macedonia, to monitor these countries. And it is my suggestion to all international friends in Washington, in Brussels, and all around to begin looking to Western Balkans from a geostrategic point of view, not only as a technical issue of implementing agreements. Or unfortunately, those who are opposed to Euro-Atlantic integration, they don't choose means for their goals. And this is also one of these attempts are attempts to present Kosovo as a failed state, starting from producing fake news, which are immediately translated in the media, international media, including Kosovo media, the worst speculative news items, which unfortunately people read. This is the case in other parts of the Balkans as well. As I said, in Kosovo, they will not be able to change the attitudes of the people and their aspiration, but through presenting a distorted view of Kosovo, what they do every 3 months when reporting the Security Council of the United Nations, what Sputnik does, or anywhere where they have an opportunity, be it in the Council of Europe through particular members of the European Parliament, or through media who are close to Russian oligarchs. So it's really the last moment for our partners to take seriously this need to consolidate Kosovo internationally. After all, this is our joint project. We are most loyal to our partners, international partners, and we don't even seek another alternative. We don't have any alternative except membership in NATO and Russia. We are not like Serbia in relation with Brussels, always using the Russian card. Okay, if you give us something, we'll be with you. If you don't give us something, then we'll go with Russia. Yeah, our patience is stronger than and deeper than European Union's delay, but we are not able to fight Russia's war to present Kosovo in negative light. As Kosovo, we have an obligation to try to oppose Russia's attempts, and I cannot deny that there are attempts by Russia to penetrate Kosovo and exert influence, either through media or through businesses. As I said, they have a liaison office in Pristina, so they have people in Pristina. They have people in the northern part of Kosovo, in Mitrovica, and there they have even recruited Serbs who serve as paramilitaries in Ukraine, fighting along pro-Russian forces. And this is not a secret, this is public. So for us, it remains very important that we coordinate with all our international partners to understand each other and to really conclude consolidation of Kosovo's statehood internationally. I don't believe that the Russian veto in the Security Council is directed only against Kosovo. It is much more than Kosovo. And I've heard this from Lavrov and Churkin. They told us, we are not fighting against you. This is how we fighting those who have supported your independence, the West. And this includes you, Canada, as well. This is the reality.
Thank you, Mr. Wisniewski. Colleagues, I want to, on behalf of the committee, thank our President from Kosovo, President Thaci, for coming. I think this is a great honor and a pleasure, and I think Canadians themselves will enjoy the opportunity to hear firsthand on the developments, the struggles. Obviously, every government, those of us on the government side and those who were a while ago will know that every day is a challenge, and it just takes good leadership and a firm hand and lots of friends and allies, and we think Canada is one of those for Kosovo, so we want to thank you very much for this opportunity to spend a very high-end quality hour with you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Colleagues, this will bring this meeting to a close. We'll see you on Thursday.